This lesson covers factors and multiples, specifically prime factors as well. We're going to do greatest common factor and least common multiple in another lesson. But to start off this lesson, we're going to focus on factors. Usually what I do is I give an example. 3 times 6 is 18. Now in math, and you've done order of operations, you know what the operations are in math. In math, when you multiply two things together, we call this number here the product. That's usually what we say when the answer to two multiplied numbers. These numbers over here, these are called factors because they are two numbers that when multiplied together give you 18. And this is what we're going to focus on. A factor, in very the simplest terms, is a factor is something that is divisible by a number. So it's very strange to say it, so we are just going to do it. I'm going to use the example of the number 30. And I'm going to just draw a big bracket around here because that's usually how we list out our factors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the smallest number and work my way to the highest number by figuring out what needs to be multiplied by small numbers in order to make the main number in question 30. So we are going to start with the number 1. Well, I know that 1 times 30 is 30, so these are both factors of 30. And notice how I put this 30 on the end. I know that a lot of people have said that it's kind of like meeting in the middle here. It's like a parabola or in another term, a rainbow. Now, the second number that I'm going to try is the number 2. Well, I know that 30 is divisible by 2 because it's an even number. Going back to my divisibility rules, it's an even number, 2. And I ask myself, well, 2 times what gives me 30? 2 times 15 gives me 30. And then I keep going. The number 3 is divisible by 30, and its partner is the number 10. The number 4 is not divisible by 30. The number 5 is, and it's 5 times 6. And you'll notice that we came into a full loop. So these are the factors of 30. And that is essentially what it means to factor a number in this case. The next thing that I do want to talk to you about, though, as we talk about factors, are prime factors. And the key word here is prime. At one point or another, you might have heard the word prime number. Prime number is a number that is only divisible by 1 and itself. So its only factors are the number 1 and itself. An example of this would be if we start from like the lowest numbers in our system. If we talk about the number 2, the number 3, and the number 5, well, the factors of 2 are just 1 times 2, and the factors of 3 are just 1 times 3, and a factor of 5 is just 5 times 1. And so you'll notice that there's nothing else, so then these are prime numbers. What if a number isn't divisible by 1 in itself and could be divisible by more? We call this number a composite. So it's the complete opposite of a prime number. A composite number is divisible by more than just 1 in itself. It is divisible by more than 1 and itself. An example would be any of the examples that we just did here, 18, 30. These have products that are more than just 1 in itself. Therefore, these are composite numbers. I just want to make a huge shout out to the biggest exception, number 1. What is the number 1? Is that a prime number or is it a composite number? The number 1 is neither prime nor composite. It's just the number 1. If a teacher or a student or your parents ask you, is the number 1 a prime number? The answer is no. It's just the number 1. It does not have 2 different factors, and it doesn't have more than 2 different factors, so it's neither prime nor composite. Now that we know everything that we need to know about prime and composite numbers and the number 1, we are going to talk about prime factors of numbers. You know what factors are, you know what prime numbers are. Now we're going to mesh them together and we're going to do prime factors. We already know that certain numbers have factors, and we can use the example 30 that we used in the first, or in one of the first slides. So we said that the factors of 30 were 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30. Now we're going to talk about the prime factors. What are the prime factors of 30? We're looking for the prime numbers of 30. And I can see some prime factors here. But what if we had a number and we didn't actually know what all the factors were? What we do is we create what is called a factor tree, where you start with the number that you're looking for factors of, and then you split it up into two factors that you know of. So two factors that I know of for the number 30 are, say, 6 times 5. And then I ask myself, are these numbers the prime numbers? 5 is, but 6 is not. So I keep going, and I get 6 times 2 times 3 instead of 6. And we bring down the 5 and multiply it by 5. And I, just with the help of this nice tree, have just determined what the factors, or what the prime factors of 30 are. We'll try it with another number just so that you get into the hang of it. We'll use the example of number 48. So I start with two numbers that I know when multiplied together give me 48. 6 times 8. And it doesn't matter the two numbers that you chose. I ask myself, is the 6 and 8 prime numbers? Both of them are not. They are composite numbers. So I'm going to split them up into their own factors here. And ask myself, am I done? I have prime factors here, but this 4 is definitely not a prime factor. So I'm going to have to bring down this 2, bring down this 3, and the 4 I'm going to split up to 2 and 2, right? Because those are prime numbers, and then I'm going to bring down this 2. So now I know that the prime factors of 48 are 2 times 3 times 2 times 2 times 2. That was pretty long for me to say. So what you can do to condense it is you can start with the lowest number here and see it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And so instead, I can just do 2 to the 4 times this 3 here. So this is the same thing. And it would be very, very great if you got into the habit of just doing 2 to the power of 4. The last thing that we're going to talk about now that we're comfortable with factors and prime factors is very quickly talking about what a multiple is. So I'm going to write that here in a title. There's a difference between a multiple of a number and a factor of a number. When we talk about numbers that are multiples, it's basically a sequence where every number is separated by the same digit. If I give you an example, you'll know right away. If I do the number 4, multiples of 4 would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and so on. These are the multiples of 4. The multiples of 2 would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and so on. Another number that we know the multiples of by heart is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. These are multiples of 5. So you'll notice that there's a huge difference between the factors of a number and just the multiples of a number. And just because I have them all listed out and in anticipation for your next lesson, notice that sometimes certain numbers have some multiples in common. And that can be a very important thing, especially when you are going to be learning about greatest common factor, which will be in your next lesson. But just to recap, you should now know what a factor is, specifically what a prime factor is, how to make a factor tree when you are looking for the prime factors, remembering that the number 1 is neither prime nor composite, as well as understanding what a multiple is.